Well, our Honda Accord's bouncing all over the place, and there's a rattle up under the hood. At 160,000 miles, this is a perfect candidate for struts. And that's where we'll start today on Tech Garage. See you in the shop. Welcome to Tech Garage, presented by Advance Auto Parts. Now, a basketball, it's supposed to bounce like that, but a car, not so much. Our Honda Accord's bouncing like a baby buggy. You know, we got some rattles in there, and this thing's got 160,000 miles. Brian, this one's a perfect candidate for some struts.
Truly a prime candidate. You know, this is one of the slowest eroding segments on any vehicle that there is. It's kind of like your headlights. You know, they fade over time, they dim over time, but hopefully your eyes are healthy and you don't realize that. You kind of compensate for it. Similarly, with shocks and struts, they wear out, and even factory springs over time. And if you drive the vehicle every day, you don't realize, wow, these things are actually wearing out. And there's huge implications as it relates to stopping safety and handling and all those things. So here's a demo, John. Here's the front end of our creeper. You'll be the front end of the car.
All right.
And as these struts and shocks and springs sag and fade over time, what happens to the front end?
Down it's going to go.
Which is the same as raising the rear end of the vehicle. So again, huge implications when it comes to stopping and handling in all types of conditions.
And not only this, I mean, this affects ride height, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And so anybody can measure ride height before you start this project, and it's really important that you look it up and do your research and understand what your vehicle is supposed to have. There's also certain spots to measure ride height, but just take note of your ride height, and you're going to see at the end of this project, you're going to have a better handling vehicle that'll do the right thing in all conditions.
Your ride height, critical. This talks about vehicle geometry. Once that drops, vehicle geometry's off, center line, thrust angle, we can't even align the car, really. You put it to specifications, it's never going to hold. You're going to have tire wear patterns, all kinds of things going on.
You know, this job isn't anywhere near as hard as people think it is, and I think we'll show you that today.
Exactly. Why don't you get started on that strut? I got a cool demo over here.
Awesome.
I'll go ahead and show them all about it.
All right.
Hey, B, heads up. All right, now we've got our LGA Create over here. Actually sent us this front end suspension trainer. This is really cool. It's got electric power steering motor, a rack, and it works. But the cool part is we're going to focus right over here on the strut assembly. And let's start with the basics. This is actually a whole strut assembly. It bolts down here to the spindle, and then it comes up to the frame of the vehicle. Now, what is a strut assembly? It actually has a shock absorber or strut inside of here. You can see this one right here. It's inside. And then you're going to have a spring. They're going to be separate pieces. We'll show you a little later a strut compressor and how we're going to go about it to take it apart, but they're two different things. Now the spring, those control ride height. The struts or the shocks control spring oscillations. That's how it works. So if you're bouncing like a baby buggy, you may just need some struts. If your ride height's off, you're going to need some springs. Now you can look inside, see how they actually work. This is pretty cool because I got a cutaway here, and you can see this right here. You can see the actual orifice tubes right here. That's what happens. There's oil on both sides of this, and what happens is the oil compress, it's going to go through a little bit of orifice tubes here, and that's going to cause the compression and the rebound as it goes up and down. This is cool because it's a gas shock, and down here is going to be some gas right here. This is going to pressurize up on that oil and keep any aeration from happening. Man, this thing makes a really nice ride. And that's what we're going to actually put on there with some struts. Now, how does a strut work? Well, it turns back and forth, so it has to go with the vehicle. You can see it here. As I turn to the right and I turn to the left, it has to keep that vehicle geometry correct. And up top, a couple things we want to check is a rotator plate. This is actually under there, and it's rotating to the right or to the left. Squeaks, rattles, things like that. You can see it's spinning. The strut's attached to the frame, and the rotator plate spins back and forth. That's one thing you want to check. Brian mentioned earlier ride height. That's another thing. Now you can just look for some visual leaks. You can look at the actual strut itself. Make sure you don't have any leaking in there, rattling, the bushings in there. Make sure they're all in good shape. And if you suspect that you have a bad shock or strut, you can actually unbolt them. We did a jounce test on ours and bounced up and down, but you can see this one. I can barely even push it in. And this one here goes in real easy. I mean, it's going in like nothing. So that would give you a good understanding on how to look at and test your struts and shocks. Brian's in action, taking that one apart. Let's see how he's coming along.
This is a classic McPherson strut assembly here. And honestly, these are pretty standard on vehicles, but different vehicles have different types of mounts. So our Honda is a little bit unique. We've got down in the lower, we've got 2 mounting bolts, an upper and a lower mounting bolt. I'm going to go ahead and back them out. Now you'll notice up on the top of the strut, there's 3 bolts that punch up through the rotator plate and bearing plate to hold that in from the top. I've got 2 nuts removed, but 1 holding it there because I don't want this strut to fall down, crush my hands, or do any damage to a brake hose or anything as it comes down out. So it's literally going to be hanging here as soon as I get this lower mounting bolt out. Pretty simple to do. Right tool for the job. Okay. Good there. We're going to back this lower bolt out. You may have to give it a little bit of encouragement. That's why I have a hammer laying here. So far, so good. We're going to move this bracket down and away. This is where the strut cartridge is now hanging on its own and didn't fall down out. Good plan. So the strut cartridge is hanging there. Get a good grip. It's not terribly heavy on this car. Release the nut. Watch the brake hose as you come down and out. You may have to give it a little bit of encouragement to get it to go where you want it to go. Fitment is usually the hardest part. And there is the old worn strut with the factory spring on it. Now, we're fortunate that Monroe makes quick struts. And this is what we're going to put on the vehicle in just a minute. Now, if your vehicle isn't engineered this way, this can only go in one way. You might want to mark yours and make sure you get it right because the orientation of this spring and the rotator plate is imperative for this vehicle to perform and operate safely. So, back in with the new. Up, it's seated. Let me get a nut on here to hold it. Spin it on. Now that strut assembly is hanging in there. And I don't have to try to hold it. No damage is going to be done to the brake line. Now, if you're not using a quick strut, you're going to have to take your factory spring and roll it over to the new strut. That has got to be done safely. And after the break, John's going to show you exactly how to do that the right way. Stay with us on Tech Garage, presented by Advanced Auto Parts.